How do you approach someone who you know well that you maybe think's got something going on, or they've got a behaviour or something that they're doing that you're like, I need to have a chat to them about that. That ain't right, or it ain't cool, or it ain't good for them. And you basically have to pull them aside and say, look, I think Taylor Swift is becoming an idol in your life. Where do we start?
Look, how do you approach
that with somebody, Frank?
Don't. You leave that. You just leave that one well alone.
No, I'm teasing to roll people up. But that whole thing about like talking to someone about something beyond just your normal everyday relationship, you know, how do you do that well?
A quick karate chop to the throat and some public shaming.
Karate chop to the throat.
That'll usually sort things out.
A social media expose post.
I mean, it clearly depends on the nature of the thing that they've done that you want to have or are doing that you want to have a chat about. I mean, if it's something highly illegal, of course, that's going to be different from, hey, you said something in a conversation and I took offence to that. You know?
Okay, there's levels.
There are levels. How you handle it is going to be different. Of course, the passage that everybody often turns to in this is in Matthew 18. If a brother or sister does you wrong, go and have a private conversation. If that doesn't work, bring out 2 other people along. That gets trotted out a lot. And so I just want to offer a caution around that passage when it gets used, because I've seen it used in varying contexts. Used in this sort of situation where there are just a couple of friends and one thinks someone else is up to something that really isn't good or isn't healthy, might be hurting them, might be hurting others. The passage works in that situation. But I've also seen it used in situations where someone has been abused in a church setting by someone who has power, and then when that person has raised it with someone else that they feel safe with, someone's gone, oh no, you should have just come and raised it with me privately. This passage does not have that in mind, because this passage assumes equality of power, that these 2 people who are talking together share similar status. It is unfair to expect someone who has been abused by someone who has a very powerful status to go and talk to that person directly about what it is that they've done. So I just want to offer that.
Yeah, to keep the power dynamic thing in play, right?
Yeah, it is perfectly okay for someone who has suffered a serious abuse to go to someone that they feel safe with to raise it, rather than going to that person. But in the case of a friend who's doing something, you feel concerned about what it is that they're doing because maybe they're hurting themselves or others, it is perfectly okay to go and have a chat. And I think raise it from the perspective of worry, rather than just, hey, you're doing this really bad thing, you naughty, naughty person.
You bad boy.
Yeah, my guess is that if you truly are friends, there's probably a concern there. And raising it from that place of concern is a good start.
Yeah, I guess if you value your friendship, honesty is also part of that.
Yeah.
It comes within, and I had a situation with one of my very, very close friends, and we're very close today, but I didn't agree with a decision he made around relationships, around his relationship. And I was pretty honest with him around it, to the point where I allowed him to do his thing, but I said to him, I'm not sure this is going to work for you, bro, based on this, and this. And so I voiced that with him, and then I let him do his thing. The relationship dissolved. It didn't happen anymore. And I didn't say I told you so, but I felt like I had a responsibility to share that with him because I was concerned, but allowed him to still do his thing. I don't know whether I should have pressed a little bit more so he didn't go into that relationship, but I don't know. It's just one of those things.
And I would imagine that there's an element of trust built there because you're friends. You can say stuff and you've got all this back history that says we're going to be okay, that this isn't coming from a place of judgment. It's coming from a place of friendship. Friendship naturally first involves a building of trust. There's a monk, I think he was French, sounds French, in the 12th century, wrote a book about spiritual friendship, Elrod of Rivaux. I don't know if that's how it's French. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. But he talked about how friendship, in a Christian sense, is an embodiment of God in some way. It's a reflection of the relationship of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But then it's a reflection of God's relationship with us as well. And it points us towards God, and it should grow us towards God. Now, a growth towards God involves some honest things being said sometimes, some things being pointed out. And we've all got stuff going on in our life, and we want to have people in our life who can call that stuff out, but do so safely. Like there are people who in my career of over 20 years now of public ministry will just want to call me out. And so I'll get text messages or messages, and most of them I'll just let it go. They just don't have that place in my life. But there are people I have in my life, those who I feel accountable to, but then friends as well, that if they said something to me, they're the people that I'm going to listen to. You need those people in your life.
It's interesting, because sometimes I think about it and I'm like, man, you worry, is this person going to be offended if I say something? Are they going to be like, yo, you got no place trying to say that, look at your own backyard or whatever it is, I mean, I know we're talking in generalizations here, so it's a hard conversation, but I remember hearing from a friend of mine who went through a pretty bad period in their life, and they had some, basically they were drinking a lot, and no one said anything for a long, long time until finally someone took them aside and kind of brought it up with them, being like, what is going on? Like, and it kind of addressed it with them. And they're past all that now, but they were like, in that moment, they're like, that was basically me trying to signal to everybody, like, I'm in a bad way.
Yeah.
Can somebody please, like, ask me what's going on? It's almost like a public cry for help is why they were doing it. And he's like, and still, no one was saying anything, even though I knew they all knew and they were all seeing it. And he's like, when finally somebody reached out, it was like, he was like longing for it, for someone just to bring it up with him, because he couldn't bring it up himself, like what he was going through. And it was like, so sometimes, I don't know, it's like people almost want to be called out, and we feel like we shouldn't, but then
I think sometimes
it's a delicate thing.
I think the self-destructive paths that some people go on is a public cry for help when they don't actually know how to ask for help. And sometimes that Kiwi sensibility of not wanting to offend, not wanting any sort of conflict or confrontation can then be a disservice. But again, that I would imagine that came from, rather than a place of, you filthy sinner, look at your drinking, it came from a place of, hey, I see this going on for you and I'm really concerned. Now, someone has the right to then go, no, stuff you, and walk away, or they can listen to it. And sometimes they might do the stuff you straight away because of a sense of defensiveness, but then over time, as it percolates, you might find something else develops. But it needs to come from a place of concern.
I agree. Just finally, for me to wrap my part up with that, I think it's a responsibility that we have, especially in today's day and age, about well-being, about somebody's space as well. Maybe you're not the right person to be able to talk to that person in Bjorn's situation, but you need to share with somebody who's maybe closer to that person, say, hey, I think something's going on here. Maybe I'm not the right person, but I think you are. You're really tight. You need to maybe just step in some way, shape or form. I'm not sure.
Yeah.